In 8th grade 3-4, we're dealing with dividing rational numbers, okay? And this deals with reciprocals. So reciprocals, you need to know the definition, which you should have your vocabulary, but I'm going to make sure to focus on this, is the multiplicative inverse, two numbers multiplied together. It's also called the multiplicative inverse. So this is AKA, also known as multiplicative inverse. And it means that it's two numbers multiplied together to get one. So for example, if you know how the inverse, it's the reverse. You know, the reverse of -1 would be to get 0. Okay, the opposite of -1 would be 1. The opposite meaning whatever you need to add to get 0. So the opposite of 3 would be -3 because -3 would get me 0. So 0 would be your finishing point. In this one, it's two numbers, in order to get the reciprocal, it's two numbers multiplied together to get 1. So basically, if you're multiplying two fractions, they need to cancel each other out. So if I have 2 over 3, the inverse would be 3 over 2. Why? Because if I multiply this out, 2 times 3 is 6, 3 times 2 is 6, 6 over 6 equals 1. So something that multiplies together get me 1. So they're the inverse of each other. If I were to multiply this out too, the 2's would cancel out and the 3 would cancel out. So whatever way it is that you see it, that's what the reciprocal. So 2, 3 is a reciprocal of 3, 2, because when you multiply them, it's 1. It's the same thing as inverse, right? So if I want to find the inverse of 7 over 16, I have to figure out what do I multiply 7 over 16 to get 1? Well, in order to get rid of 16, I have to have 16 on top. And 7 here, since 7's on top, 7 has to be on the bottom here. I flip it. So 16 over 7. Okay? So my inverse is 16 over, my multiplicative inverse is 16 over 7. So for example, if I have 6 over 7, my inverse would be 7 over 6. Pretty simple, right? This one, just like in the last section, they don't like mixed fractions, okay? I need to put it in one fraction, and I do that by taking the whole number, multiplying it by the denominator, and adding the numerator. So -3 times 5, which is -5. Well, I'm going to leave the negative, okay? So 3 times 5, which is 15, and I'm going to add 2. So it's 17, and the denominator stays the same, over 5. So 3 times 5 plus 2. Okay? So, in order for me to divide a fraction, because multiplying a fraction is simple, I just multiply across. Dividing is just as simple, there's just one step I have to do, and then it's the same thing as multiplication. Basically, what I'm going to take is, if I'm dividing by a half, if I'm dividing by half, try it. To get a half of something, like 8, and I times it by a half, which is 0.5, I get half, which is 4. But if I take 8 and I divide it by half, divide it by 0.5, I get 16. Basically what I'm doing is I'm multiplying it by 2, because I'm multiplying by the inverse, if that makes sense. So if it doesn't, that's fine, just pay attention. The rule is, if I'm dividing, I'm going to take the second fraction, it has to be the second one. I'm going to take the second fraction, I'm going to find the inverse, which I'm going to flip it. So 4 over 5 times the inverse, which is 10 over 3. Once I flip it, instead of division, this turns to multiplication. So basically, I'm going to flip and multiply. Okay, that's the rule, flip and multiply. So I'm going to flip the second one, and then I'm going to multiply. And just like the other section, 4 times 10 is 40 over 8. Okay, so 40 over 8 is 5. Okay, this one doesn't have a fraction, but we know how to turn it into a fraction. We just put it over 1. And because it's division, I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to flip and multiply. So I'm going to flip this to 1 over 3, and then I'm going to multiply. So I end up with 5 times 1, which is 5 over 18. And because that doesn't reduce, that's my answer. These ones, again, are very unfriendly because they're mixed fractions, so we're going to put it into improper fraction. I'm going to take 9 and multiply it by 3, which is 27 plus 1. So 28 over 3. And then I'm going to keep the division because I'm still trying to find this. So divided by, I'm going to leave that negative, and then 3 times 9, which is 27, plus 1 is 28 over 3. Okay? So basically from here, I'm then going to do 28 over 3, and then I'm going to flip this to negative 3 over 28, and then multiply. Okay? So 28 times negative 3 is negative 84, and 3 times 28 is positive 84. So negative 84 over positive 84 is a negative 1. All right? So go ahead and write that down, and then try on your own page 146, numbers 2 and 6 to bring to class, 146, number 2 and 6, and I will see you in class.